Marcus Chen had never expected his old leather jacket to become the talk of the Kepler station's diplomatic quarter. The worn brown bomber jacket, inherited from his grandfather who'd flown cargo runs through the asteroid belt, had seen better. Decades. Its synthetic leather was cracked, the zipper stuck halfway, and one pocket had a hole where he'd once tried to fix a plasma cutter while wearing it. But apparently, none of that mattered to HFY. The Velithan ambassador's daughter stood barely 4 feet tall, her chitinous blue-black carapace gleaming under the station's artificial lighting. Like all of her species, she possessed 4 arms, compound eyes that shifted color with her moods, and delicate antennae that twitched at the slightest sound. She was also, Marcus had learned over the past 3 months of working as a cultural liaison, absolutely fascinated by human customs. It had started as a joke during one of the regular diplomatic dinners. Ambassador Velktor had been droning on about trade regulations while HFY sat nearby, clearly bored out of her mind. Her antennae drooped, and her compound eyes had shifted to a dull gray that Marcus had learned meant she was fighting sleep. The station's environmental controls had malfunctioned again, dropping the temperature in the dining hall to nearly freezing. While the other species present, the reptilian Saurek delegation and the energy-based Luminas, seemed unaffected, the humans were visibly shivering. Marcus noticed that HFY, despite her species' supposed cold tolerance, had drawn her 4 arms close to her body. Without thinking, he'd shrugged off his grandfather's old jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Here," he'd whispered. "Human tradition says you give your jacket to someone who's cold." HFY's eyes had immediately shifted to a brilliant golden yellow, the Velithan equivalent of surprise and delight. Her antennae perked up, and she'd pulled the oversized jacket tighter around her small frame. It was comically large on her, the sleeves hanging past her hands, the hem nearly reaching her feet. That had been 3 weeks ago. Marcus had expected to get the jacket back the next day, maybe with a polite thank you note written in the formal diplomatic style the Velithans preferred. Instead, HFY had worn it to every subsequent meeting, diplomatic function, and casual encounter they'd had. She wore it over her formal ceremonial robes during trade negotiations. She wore it with her environmental suit when they toured the station's hydroponics bay. She even wore it to the weekly cultural exchange sessions where various species shared aspects of their civilizations. "Is there significance to the covering garment ritual?" Ambassador Velktor had asked Marcus during their private meeting yesterday. The elder Velithan's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was their version of concerned confusion. "My daughter speaks of little else. She has requested detailed information about human jacket-giving customs from our cultural database." Marcus had tried to explain that it wasn't really a ritual, just a gesture of kindness, but the ambassador's expression suggested he didn't quite believe that any human action could be so simple. The truth was, Marcus was beginning to wonder if there was more to it himself. Watching HFY navigate the station's corridors, the too large jacket flapping around her like a brown leather cape, he'd noticed changes in how others treated her. The normally dismissive Saurek traders now nodded respectfully when she passed. The Luminas, who usually ignored solid matter beings entirely, had begun acknowledging her presence with flashes of light. Even more intriguingly, HFY herself seemed different, more confident. During yesterday's cultural exchange, she'd stood up and given an impromptu presentation about Velithan poetry, something she'd never done before. Her antennae had remained upright throughout the entire speech, and her eyes had maintained the bright silver that indicated happiness and pride. "The human friend Marcus has shown my people that gestures need not be grand to carry meaning," she'd said, tugging the jacket's collar up around her neck. "This simple gift has taught me that kindness translates across all species." That evening, Marcus found her in the station's observation deck, still wearing the jacket while gazing out at the stars. The massive window showed the swirling nebula that surrounded Kepler Station, its purple and gold gases creating an ever-changing cosmic canvas. "Zix," he said, approaching carefully. Her antennae twitched in acknowledgement, though she didn't turn around. "I have been researching human customs," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality that made Velithan's speech so distinctive. "The giving of clothing items. In your species' history, it often signifies protection, care, belonging." Marcus felt his cheeks warm. "Sometimes. But sometimes it's just because someone looks cold." She finally turned, her compound eyes shifting to a warm amber. "And sometimes," she said, "it becomes more than what was intended." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Ambassador Velktor approached, flanked by 2 other Velithan officials Marcus didn't recognize. "Daughter," the ambassador said formally, "I present Subcommander Theknal and Cultural Attaché Vexashi. They have come from the homeworld specifically to study this jacket phenomenon." The 2 newcomers stared at Zix-Hai with obvious fascination. Subcommander Theknal's antennae practically vibrated with excitement. "Is it true that this garment grants the wearer increased social status among alien species? And that it represents a formal alliance between your family and the human government?" added Cultural Attaché Vexashi. Marcus opened his mouth to correct them, but Zix-Hai spoke first. "It represents something far more valuable," she said, straightening the jacket's collar. "It represents the human capacity for spontaneous kindness. They give freely of themselves, expecting nothing in return. This jacket is not a political tool or a status symbol. It is proof that some species value individual comfort over diplomatic protocol." She looked directly at Marcus, her eyes now, a brilliant blue-white that he'd never seen before. "It is proof that the humans understand something the rest of us have forgotten. Sometimes the smallest gestures create the strongest bonds." As the Velithan officials murmured among themselves, scribbling notes on their digital tablets, Marcus realized that his simple joke had inadvertently become something much larger. Word would spread to the Velithan homeworld, and from there to the greater Galactic Council. Humanity's reputation for unexpected kindness would grow, all because of one worn-out leather jacket and a cold diplomatic dinner. Zix-Hai smiled, a complex expression involving the positioning of her mandibles that had taken Marcus weeks to learn to recognize. "I think," she said quietly, "I will wear this every day." And Marcus realized he was perfectly fine with that.